healthcare, right or wrong, we started with the hardest thing. We started with oncology. So what we did with Watson had been fed all textbooks, all journals, about 18 million papers, and then we started training with some of the best cancer centers in the world. Because these systems do have to be trained. You don't just pour all their information in and say, you're a doctor. And by the way, I want to be really clear, and I've been so emphatic, I want to come back to a policy letter I issued to our company yesterday. These are technologies to augment human intelligence. In fact, I actually don't like the word AI because cognitive is much more than AI. And so AI says replacement of people. It carries some baggage with it. And that is not what we're talking about. By and large, we see a world where this is a partnership between man and machine, and that this is in fact going to make us better and allow us to do what the human condition is best able to do. And I have to tell you, we have seen this play out that way with every profession we've worked through. You watch it become not a thing. It's a very two-way relationship, and it is a tool that helps, and it makes you as a professional do a better job. So we started, right, as I started sideways there, on augmenting, and with the doctors, training on oncology. So I fast forward to where we are today. Watson has learned, we started with breast, lung, colon, the hard body cancers. By the end of this year, he'll have trained on what causes 80% of cancer in the world, 80% of the cases.
And explain how you train. What goes on? As you said, you don't just throw the data into a machine.
No. So first, very early on, had to learn the language, which is true in every profession. Think about whatever job you have in the room. Every profession's got its language and what it means. You take it for granted now that you know it. So we had to teach him the language of medicine, and then what's associated. And so as you give more information, ask questions, check answers, right and wrong, it begins to learn over time. So fed the information from the journals, the textbooks, then in fact the training went on, so tens of thousands of hours with these doctors. Then we took medical records, and where you knew the outcomes, and you would give him the input of the EMR, you would give him the x-rays, the diagnostics, learn, did he get it right, did he not, so back and forth, and you would improve the accuracy. And so you get to a point where you could diagnose and you could offer treatments, and around different kinds of you might put limiters. You know, if I'm a cancer patient and of a certain age, I still want to have children, there are certain things I don't want to take as medicine and the like. And so you could put different, and what we learned, and this will be true with every profession, people don't want a black box. They do want to understand, this is assisting me, so give me the percent's confidence of this diagnosis. Give me the sources of data that fed in primarily to do this. So where we're at now, we are rolling out in hospitals across India, China, Thailand, Finland, Italy, 3 more in the way. Of course, in the United States, we'd started as an oncology advisor. Then we moved on to clinical trial. And
just to explain that basically the idea would be, correct me if I'm wrong, which is that no doctor can possibly know every case that has ever taken place.
Breast cancer's got 800 therapies around it. And not to even mention clinical trial matches. And so you can't. It is, I think everyone could see that very genuinely. It's impossible. And so, or go to a place like India, 1 doctor for 1,600 cancer patients. You will, a great statistic in the world, in the United States, very developed country, 15% of people with cancer will be treated at a real cancer center. The other 85% are treated at whatever their local hospital is. Now, just, you know, you can magnify that in another country. Right. And so that is the real issue. And that's true with many diseases, by the way, or just, this idea of what is really credible information, right? Over the weekend, my husband burnt his hand. And do you know, what are you supposed to do with a burned hand? Do you know? I was, of course, working, he was cooking. So what?
Put cold water on it.
Okay, you know. So he walks in with ice cubes all over it, right? And I said, you know, I don't think you're supposed to do that. And he's like, well, he's like, no, it's fine. And I said, no. So I get online, I do a search, and of course you get 3.5 million answers to that. And I'm like, well, now which one do I trust here? And of course I go to like a Cleveland clinic, a Mayo clinic, because all the rest before it, forget it. You have to, and of course it is run it for 20 minutes, by the way, cool water. And it's all the reasons why ice is bad. But then it goes on to say, you know, all these other things all the way up to calling the, you know, for an ambulance, right? And so This is true with everything is like that. The search is no good for these kinds of, for many of the problems you and I deal with in a profession or in anything that I think you're making important decisions.
They taught Watson to read medical literature essentially in about a week. It was not very hard. And then Watson read 25 million papers in about another week. And then it also scanned the web for clinical trials open at other centers. And all of a sudden, we had this complete list that was sort of everything one needed to know.
Did this blow your mind?
Oh, it totally blew my mind.
Watson's cognitive computing will now be available nationwide for the first time. IBM CEO Ginni Rometty is with us. Welcome.
Thank you, Charlie.
Good morning.
Josh.
IBM is betting the company on artificial intelligence.
It is the next era. I mean, just think of this, and maybe an easy way to think of it is, this is the third era of technology that's really all we've ever known. The first was machines that counted, and the second was things that were programmed. And that's everything you know today, your cell phone, anything, you program it. This is a whole generation of systems that they learn, and they just learn. You don't program them.
And so what are the uses? We'll talk about medicine in a moment, but what new world is it opening up?
To me, this is a world that's going to solve so many problems that aren't solved. And so, as I always say, we'll solve the unsolvable, like healthcare, like risk, like food safety, and on the other side, everyday life. In fact, I've really been bold. I think in the next 5 years, you'll use this kind of technology to make almost any important decision. And it could be around the weather, it could be around education, it could be around shopping, but at the other end, it will be about risk, finance, whether it's anything to do with anything complex in a system in our world that's out there.
It will affect everything.
Everything.
And so what is IBM and Watson doing with Quest?
So this is a great, I know you just showed the clip from 60 Minutes, which was a little bit of a introduction into this, but we've been working, and one of the first things we did with Watson was work on healthcare. So we just announced Watson Genomics with Quest. And what this is all about is being able to do genetic analysis for basically anyone in the United States. So Quest, if you know them, they're a diagnostic company. If you've ever gone to the doctor, they serve 50% of the doctors out there, who then have and are used by and serving 70% of the country's patients with cancer. So how this works is that if your doctor believes that some sort of genetic sequencing will really help you, looking at the tumor, looking at your normal tissue, they go to Quest. Quest can do the analysis, the genetic sequencing. If it's more complex, they'll use the Broad Institute, and then Watson takes over. Watson, as Charlie, you just showed in the clip, has been training, and frankly, 20 of the best oncology centers in the world, and universities have been training Watson. And what he's looking for is what are the real mutations, and then matching up with what are the possible treatments that could matter. And so it is impossible for a doctor, no matter how great they are, to keep up with this. And then goes to recommendations, go to the pathologist, to the doctor.
And you've said that it's not your goal to replace anyone, to replace a doctor in this case. What is the relationship then? What's the ideal relationship?
I've watched this relationship between the doctor. In fact, we believe this era is man and machine. And in fact, I know we say artificial intelligence, but it is really augmenting our intelligence. Because I don't care what your job is, your jobs, there's so much information, and we call it cognitive, because of cognitive overload, you can't keep up. In healthcare, 8,000 papers a day. And another great statistic, in the healthcare system, there is 3 million times more data than all books ever written. So what's a doctor going to do? And so this idea I see, and I've watched it with the oncologists, it's very collegial. It's back and forth, because you're testing your ideas and your thinking, and that's how I see it working in almost every profession.
I have to ask this because we promoted this question. Critics who say machines could get too smart and doom us all.
Yeah, look, that isn't our goal, and in fact, this is supervised learning. So think of it as Watson's been trained by the best oncologists. He's been trained by the best people in risk and financial services. He's been trained for teachers by teachers. And so this type of technology, when I say augmenting, it's been trained. You have all this data.
But you talk to everybody. Are we going to reach a point in which machines are smarter than humans?
I don't think we're going to reach that point anytime soon, and this will bring so much more benefit. This is an era, and it's our goal, that this is supervised learning, and it is man and machine.
Yeah, that's what IBM always says, it's man plus machine.
Man and machine, and that is what we see really playing out.
Yeah, Elon Musk has called artificial intelligence like summoning the demons, the concern that they could some point become smarter than humans. But I think of Watson as more of sharing information and processing all that information more quickly so that doctors...
That's what it is. The rapidity and the velocity of the ability to assimilate information blows your
Yes, and the part people forget, it's the different kinds of information. It's one thing to have things written down, but it's very different because Watson has learned to read x-rays, images, photos, pictures, movies, tweets, sensors. That's really the difficult part.
And this opens up personalized medicine for everyone.
It does, in fact, and it's more than personalized medicine. It'll be personalized medicine for everyone. In fact, that's actually the meaningful part about this Quest diagnosis. This really scales this kind of technology in a way it's accessible to everyone. And that to me is important. Because, by the way, this kind of technology and when you do genomic sequencing, it's typically for late-stage cancers, stage 3, stage 4, and they're really difficult. And they're difficult to find what is, and if you've known anyone, you've always said, are we sure we've looked at everything? Right. And this is one way to do that.
Yeah, and the end goal that we can cure cancer more quickly.
Absolutely, taking cancer head on.
Ginni, thanks so much.
Great to have you here.
Have so much information, and this is what got us started on the journey long ago, so much that if you don't do something, your brain, us as humans, cognitively can't deal with all of that, right? A doctor, 8,000 papers a day. Your doctor cannot be current. It's impossible. And so what would you do? And to date, every system ever built has been programmed. I mean, your phones, no matter what you use in technology to date, it's been programmed in some way. These systems, you can't program them for all of the different if-then-what could possibly be. So you need a system that could understand all this data, could reason over it, and could learn, which means they do become more powerful with time. So that, to me, this intersects this idea of what all these big issues are in the world right now, and it is in part a solution.
Ginni, I was wondering whether you might talk about your concept of the new color.
Yes. This is... It really wraps up everything we've talked about here, because when I say there's a skills crisis, I really do believe 100% of jobs will change. 100% are going to change. And even if you look, and there's all different statistics everyone in here has. I looked at the jobs created in the U.S. in the recent 10 years, 2/3 are all digital-enabled jobs. So here you have this issue, and you have then this big gap between people who are in the workforce today, so whether they're age 30, 40, 50, and up, that don't see that they have the skills for the future here. So we started thinking, and we've now been at this 7 years, so got a pretty good experience under our belt here with 500 other companies. We started this idea of new collar, meaning, well, look, if everyone to participate in the workforce can't necessarily have a secondary or tertiary degree, what do you do? But they can actually learn these skills and make a very good living. And so it means, therefore, you have to change the model of education. So new collar was the idea of a job, not a blue collar, not a white collar, so not a negative stimulus to this. It's a new collar, right? So not blue, white. Then for education models, there's a couple ways to get there. One would be, we all invest in education. We do $500 million a year. My colleagues do similar things. The other way, though, is apprenticeships. I want to give a few models. Apprenticeships, again, with many in the room, but if we scale them, we're finding with apprenticeships, I just met my most recent batch of apprentices. I have a barista, an FBI agent, a fire worker who couldn't work because of physical problems anymore, a nurse who could no longer nurse, and put them through 12 weeks. They're paid, because the other issue is debt in the countries, all countries. Mm-hmm. And so apprenticeships can make up a big gap closer for people already working to gain an additional new skill. Then you have, if you want to look at the youth coming out, this idea was something called a pathway to technology. It doesn't matter. It's a 6-year high school. So the idea that you could get your high school degree and an associate degree at the same time, and you would learn digital skills, be employable, And we're now in 13 countries, 11 states, 500 other companies are helping in a pipeline of 125,000 kids.
But does that not involve changes within the education system before you get to the extra 2 years?
Interesting you say that, because every country we've been in has maybe a different name, but a high school, and then community colleges, or they come by different name, trade schools and the like. And you marry them, ask them to work together. So it is a partnership with government that you ask them to say, I'm going to put you together. The companies will offer mentors, their employees as mentors, and internships. It's a very simple formula. It is not about a lot of money. And at 125,000 kids, they're now coming out. 400% the graduation rate, 400%, and they're able to take jobs 2x the median wage out there. And many, by the way, we're around the world where we did this together, Bill's in some of these schools with us. These are kids that are first generation into this. I mentioned this, there are other methods. The point, though, is that these new models give people pathways to get into this new workforce. Now, it means something about a company. All of us that all want to hire the top of you have to really look at your jobs and say, you know what, some of these jobs can be done by someone with that 6-year, an associate. And therefore, you have to change your paradigm of hiring. So most of the world would say tech has left the middle of the United States behind. We now have centers all through the middle that are a third this kind of degree that they look like. And that provides employment for a whole segment of the population that felt they were left behind. And so that is when you said, what do I look at? I just want to, that to me is one of the most, you can tell we as a company are passionate that if we don't fix this issue to bridge this skill right now, at the rate it's moving, you will have unrest. And so people have to have a route in.
Thank you, Ginni. This is a fascinating concept.